we're here for a maker training. Thank you so much for being here. And this is recorded, and then we will send it out in a follow-up email. And the follow-up email will also have all of the links that we mentioned, as I said before, so you don't have to worry about that. And so then, so we'll get started now. So we're going to talk about my intent. What is my intent? Who is my intent maker? I'm going to share some stories that people have shared from their Thanksgiving. And then I'll go through the word finding technique, which is sort of the meat of this. And then I'll go through stamping, and I'll show you how to stamp 2 words. And then if we wanted to do a little bit of a brainstorming session for your own Thanksgiving and, sharing all of that, that can be a time there. And then I'll share some additional resources that you can reference later. And this will all be in the follow-up email as well. So my intent, our mission is to be a catalyst for meaningful conversation and positive action. So this means that we have all these tools to create bracelets and things like that, and necklaces, and to have someone's intention tangibly on them. But the part of it that is so special, and the part of it that brings it all together, is the conversation. That conversation that you have with someone when they don't know their word, and you ask them, and then they're like, oh, wow, and this light bulb comes on, and that feeling that you both feel when someone finds, that it's their word, and they know it's their word, and it just feels so empowering. So that's with that intention, then you can lead a life of positive action, right? To live with your intention, to make sure that this is what's guiding you each step of the way. So then with that, right, we're saying that we're not a jewelry company, we're a service project, and the parts that the tools that we have in our maker kit and what makes us makers, that is what facilitates these conversations. This is just the tangible side of this intrinsic conversation that we're having with these people in our lives. And so what is an intention? A lot of you shared your word, and so I know that you definitely know what an intention is, and so it's really a mental state that helps guide us. And so what we like to say is, like, just like your watch is telling you the time, your intention and your word is that tangible reminder of what you want to do with your time, sort of like a North Star. And so who is the MyIntent maker? It's all of you, and it's me, and it's our community. Yes, exactly. Lorraine, I see you, like, your smile, and you're like, yes, we're MyIntent makers. It's really contagious. Thank you. And at the core of what makes us makers is, this meaningful conversationalist, this ability to be an active listener and to really hold that space for people to explore something that is maybe a little bit new to them, something a little bit deeper for them, and to help guide them whenever they're kind of stuck in that path. And then a community builder, because it is a ripple effect. So as we speak and as we're together, we're building this community, and for every person that you have a conversation with, they'll have another conversation with. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I'll be wearing my necklace or my bracelet or my pin or something. I'll be out, and then I'll see someone else wearing a bracelet or a necklace, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what's your word? It's almost like this conversation opener, and it's like this, it's a simple yet very distinct object, and so we want to say that this is the ripple effect of having, like, this excitement of finding your word, sharing your word, finding someone else's word. And so these are the Thanksgiving stories that I really wanted to share. I have the whole story if you wanted to read it, but I'll just recap. Um, so this maker, Sarah, she got the maker kit specifically for Thanksgiving, and she thought it would be a good way to bond with her family on a deeper level. And she used the question cards to, and everybody shared sweet, funny, and thought provoking memories and stories, and even a story that her family didn't even know where her mother in law met Oprah and nobody knew. And so it's like all these amazing things that our family, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I have a very distinct relationship with my family. You know, my mom is my mom, my dad is my dad, and having these conversations kind of opens them up to being, you know, not just my mom, not just my dad. Um, and so something that she said was everyone left feeling very loved and listened to. And I think that's something that is so poignant to share, is that whenever we're feeling like, especially now during these times when we're isolated or we're working from home and we're sort of looking at a screen all day, it's an opportunity for us to feel fulfilled with our family. Um, Victoria asked, any tips for virtual use of the conversation cards? Yes, I do. And I'll get to those in just a little bit. So yeah, great question. Um, the second story is a little bit more somber. So this family has been going through a few years of rough times. And so this maker, Amy, she decided to bring her maker kit to Thanksgiving to bring some peace and some connection. And so this is like a new tradition for their family to bridge and reconnect and to be the family that they were meant to be. And so I felt this was such a vulnerable post and so moving. I just wanted to share it with you. I don't want to say that every family is great and every family is. We all have our ups and downs, and all have our relationships that go through some tough moments. And so it's. I feel like it's such a brave thing for her to, and courageous thing for her to go out and reach out and connect with her family. So if you're in any of the same boat, like I am applauding you for your courage. So and our last story is a maker who, so I'm not going to assume that everybody just bought their maker kit, but maybe some of you have um, have bought the maker kit for something else, and then you're thinking about doing it for Thanksgiving. This maker also did that. She did it with her work team and saw the benefits of having these conversations with her work team, and then she decided to bring it to Thanksgiving. And then it was so popular at Thanksgiving that her family actually asked her to bring it to Christmas. So this is sort of like as time goes on, you can always find another reason to have these conversations with your family, your friends, your loved ones. We've seen it as a Thanksgiving activity that, because some families only celebrate one side of the family Thanksgiving, and then other families celebrate with the other side at Christmas. Like it's sort of to get everyone to share their story, which is always really great. Um, uh, Tips to include younger children into the discussion. I I we have a lot of educators that use this in their classrooms, and it ranges from, you know, elementary school to high school to college. And so um, the kids, I feel like, end up giving the best words, you know, because it's the first thing that comes to mind, and it's the thing that makes them so excited. And so I feel like there's a purity in that. Um, and and there are some questions in our question card deck that, you know, is very fun. Like our question card deck is meant to be like conversation starters. And so some of these questions are very fun. Like, what would you ask a fortune teller? Or like, who are your heroes? And I think kids would really be able to answer that very clearly. So getting to the how to help someone find their word. This is sort of, like I said, sort of the meat of this session. And all this information has come from a blog that our founder, Chris Pan, wrote on these are his tips on how he has helped other people find their words. And so I'm gonna also have the tips for Thanksgiving in this virtual setting that I found to be helpful, and that I've asked other makers in our community who have used it in this setting as well, just to like get an amalgamation, I guess, of tips for everyone. So before anything happens, it's to prepare yourself and to sort of bring in this mindset, kind of like what we did at the beginning of this session, where we took a moment to breathe together. So it's for us to become present in our bodies, to become present in this moment, where we're finding, our own word and really embodying it in this time when you're connecting with another person. And then as you're being present, also allowing yourself to be open, and to share your story. Sometimes for me, I've noticed sometimes it's a little bit harder for me to like get into that vulnerable state, and so then I just have to remind myself that this is my word. The word is nourish, and what is nourishing is to be present and to give myself in this process. And then the last thing is to be confident. Sometimes we like to, I love surprises. I love giving surprises. I love having surprises. But sometimes the best way to find someone's word is to just ask, what's your word? And then also be transparent in why do you want to help them find their word? What has been really the lessons for you when you found your word, or, the connection that you're looking to create with this person. So I think that those three things really make up the maker mindset before you have a conversation. And so when you connect and engage with the other person, what's your word is usually the first question that we ask. And Chris always likes to say, let's ask more questions than we give answers. So always asking a question and then giving an answer whenever that it'll support the other person. But starting with what's your word, and then following up with like an explanation. So in this case for Thanksgiving, like what's your word? I would love to stamp all of our family's words so that we feel connected during this time. Or I feel like we can come up with a family word, like one word that our whole family will wear, and then every time we see it, then we can all remember each other, something like that, your own intention in this. And then if you're doing it in person or virtually, like you're not planning it, if you're talking and you're exchanging this like in real time, then you'll pause and you'll allow that to sort of settle into people. And sometimes it'll feel awkward, and that's okay, because we're excited and they're just beginning that journey. And then after the pause, if a word hasn't come up, if your family isn't jumping in to be like, my word is something, then you can ask a follow-up question. And so these are the three questions that we sort of tell everyone that we ask people. So I've asked these questions to people whenever we did events. These are also the questions that are on the word finder page, but they're sort of conversation openers because they're really big, broad questions that can lead you to any which way. So the first question is, what is a quality or virtue you want more of in your life? Wow, there's a typo in there, but it's okay. what's a quality or virtue you want more of in your life? And this is sort of if people aren't really uh, don't really feel like a virtue, they can think of a virtue. It's more like a characteristic. So if they have sort of pause on that, then I'll ask, who do you admire? Why do you admire them? What about them do you admire? So sort of breaking that down into smaller questions too to help find that word. And then the second question is kind of coming at from a different way is like, what is a challenge you want to overcome? So this is if if there's an obstacle in someone's life, it's to a lot of the times we focus on that obstacle and just sort of like allow it to block us. But then the challenge here is to acknowledge this obstacle, like have this other person acknowledge this obstacle, and then say, how do you want to overcome it? What is stopping you from being the version of yourself that you want to be? You know, it's uh, seeing past it, past the obstacle to the other side, and making sure that they hold on to that vision. And then the last question is, what is something that makes you feel alive and want to focus on? And so this is really talking about passion. You know, what is something that lights you up, that, again, that feeling that you want to create every day? Even if it's a hobby, even if it's a moment, you know, uh, I said that my word, the beginning of the year, uh, was gratitude, and that was sort of that's how I wanted to live my life. Like that's what made me feel when I feel grateful for these really small moments in my day. Like it really made me feel so good. And so that's what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to focus on all the good things in my life. And so, yeah, it's just those little feelings and I would say embrace the awkward silence because these are really big questions, you know. And some people, you know, they aren't very good with this on the spot asking, and that's okay too. Some people like you can have them write it out and then get back to you a little bit later because then they can let their thoughts out fully. Some people can tell you a beautiful story, and then it's up to you to sort of interpret that to say, okay, so like from what it sounds like what about this word or how does this word make you feel, you know, just so that you make sure that you're on the same page with them when they're sharing this story with you. um, and so the last piece is support and acknowledge. So we're really allowing ourselves to be curious and ask open-ended questions, like would you share more, you know, um, what about this makes you want to embody it, you know, like what does this represent to you, things like that. It, it makes it very engaging, I think. So virtual Thanksgiving with the family. So my number one thing that I always tell people when it comes to virtual meetings or anything like that, it's like the planning is crucial because I've I've I found out that through the months, you know, like virtual gatherings, it because we're in it for work, for school, or for, you know, all of these other sort of things in our life that call our attention. And usually when we get in a virtual space, it's sort of like you don't get that you can't have a side conversation, right? You if you talk and then someone else talks, then like the sound goes off and then there's that awkward, oh you go, no you go. So really it's like uh planning it is like your best friend. um and you as the maker will be the host of it, so you can facilitate the conversation. If there's an awkward sort of like, I don't know if I want to go or whatever, be because you're letting people know beforehand, hopefully they'll feel like they're already ready to jump in with the conversation. Um, I would also recommend, especially for Thanksgiving, you know, it's all about gratitude. So if you could open up the circle, like the space with, you know, all of your family sharing. one or two things that they're grateful for this holiday, it sort of sets up the feeling of the conversation. So you want to, it can be inspiring and vulnerable, and it just kind of gets people out of a, oh, I'm in a virtual space again, you know. And then again, that support and acknowledge, like making sure that you're asking um, you're asking questions, or you know, you're allowing other people to ask questions, and people will see by your example this question asking and things like that. um, does anybody have any questions at this point about how to help someone find their word? No. Have you ever coupled people up? I haven't. So Zoom has the function to do breakout rooms, and I've done that in like a very large setting. So so like in a setting like this where we have about 75 people, 75 people, that then we would have breakout rooms. But yeah, absolutely. It just depends on the group. If your group you feel like needs about 4 people to talk, then you can definitely do a breakout group. I usually set it like a breakout group for like 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how big the group size is, and for people to share, like you can ask a question and then break them out into rooms, and then you'll be able to have them share with each other and then come back. And then a lot of people have more, I guess, people are more willing to talk about what they learned from the other person than about themselves, which is completely fine. It's for me, I get that because I'm always excited about like, oh wow, like this person's word is this because she shared this beautiful story about how she wants to open up her own business and all these things. So I feel like whenever you come back in a group and you ask people to share, people are more likely to share what they heard because they're inspired by it. Um, I feel okay. So other questions are: there a length of time that is ideal, an hour or two? I feel like uh, an hour to an hour and a half is usually what I recommend, only because attention span after an hour and a half kind of wanes, and because it's like such a focus on one thing. So yeah, about an hour to an hour and a half, but it also depends on the group size. So if you have a chattier group that's more willing to stay on for longer, like 2 hours, then go for it. But yeah, about an hour to an hour and a half is my rule of thumb. Um, any for using Zoom breakout rooms, optimal group size. So my biggest tip would be no more than 4 people on in a breakout session, because more than 4 people, then it kind of feels like someone can hide or wait until the very, very last minute. And sometimes people don't share. And that's what we don't want. um, and Jenny asked, I'm working with 20 kids, first through 8th grade. Wow, that's a big range. That's a big range of personalities. Um, any helpful hints for kids that get stuck? What timeline works best? So with 20 kids with that age range, usually so we have a worksheet that I can also send in an email that's sort of like the questions that I asked. Kids can circle one question and answer it. So it's sort of like a journal prompt, and then you can give them like 5, 7 minutes to fill out the worksheet, and then have them raise their hand, and then they can share that way. So it's a little bit more organized in that way. Um, the timeline, I'm not sure if this is the only thing. Yeah, I still think the hour and a half. If not, then you can always squeeze it in like having everybody, giving everybody the printout first, filling it out first. If you're short on time, that's always available too. So yeah, I'll definitely bring the worksheet into the email as well. Can I get instructions in Spanish? Oh wow, that's a great question. We have a very, very small team. We're a family-run business, and we have 3 people on our team, and none of us know Spanish. But that can be our next thing, is that we'll translate the instructions into Spanish as soon as we can. But yeah, thank you so much, Adriana. That was such a good suggestion. Any other questions? Anything that's coming up that you want to share with the group that you've done this? And you want to share your tips, that would be, the floor is open. If not, let's continue. So our question cards, I got a few questions on this, and so I want to make sure that I get to them. So our question cards, by a show of hands, has anybody played with the question cards before? Seen them, played with them? Okay, I see Karen. Yeah. So each maker kit comes with a deck of question cards. Oh, I'm going to unshare my screen so that you can see the question cards. So a deck of question cards. There are 33 questions on here, all ranging from what is one of the kindest things someone has said or done for you? What do you dream of achieving one day? What makes you feel loved? So it's all these different questions that it's really, really meant to be a conversation starter. So this is where we start. And then from this answer, then you have additional questions that you can ask. In a virtual setting, I think I remember someone asking, like, how do you use the question cards in a virtual setting? If you are going with the breakout room, if you're going with the breakout room thing, you can then ask a specific question and then have them break out and then discuss this question and then have that conversation in that way. You can also, as you do a breakout room, I'm pretty sure you can also send individual messages to individual breakout rooms. So you can break them out into a room and then give each group a different question. If you're doing it with your family virtually and it's like about 10 of you, 20 of you, I don't know. I don't know how big families are. You can always do a, like you pick a question and then you ask it, like, oh no, that's an intro question. Okay, what does success look like to you? Ooh, that's a big question to ask family members. What does success look like to you? And then have 3 people sort of answer the question. And sometimes it could spark like an even deeper question. And so you kind of want to go into that rabbit hole of like letting all of the stories that want to come out. And then kind of continue there. You can always have someone like be like, oh, I want this person to ask the next question. So you ask the question and someone else has to answer. In sort of like in a, I guess the best way I can describe it is like, whenever you're doing team building exercises and the ball and the yarn, and then you have to throw it to someone, and they have to throw it to someone, sort of like throwing the question to another person, and then the host, you would just ask that person that question. So I think it would be an interesting way to sort of put your family members to like, or your kids or your class or whoever to just be like, oh, shoot, like I don't know what question I'm gonna get, but it'll be really interesting to see the answer. So there's that. Uh, does anybody have um, any questions on that before we move on? Nope. Okay. I'm going to share my screen again and we'll continue. Okay, great. So going deeper. So this is, what's it? It's whenever we get stuck, right? So whenever you feel like you're having a conversation with someone and it's not quite their their word, like you feel it, your intuition is telling you it's not exactly their word. This is how we could go deeper. These are the tips to sort of break the ice and dig a little bit more. So examples. So I think this is probably the most common thing that I run into is parents who want their kid's name, which I think is beautiful and lovely. And I think that sometimes it's their, like, that is their word and that's all they need. But sometimes I feel like it feels like there's a little bit more. And so then you can ask this parent, you know, how do your children motivate you to be the best version of yourself? Like what is inspiring about your children if you're gonna have their names on your wrist every day, you know? And then another question that I like to ask is like, what quality do you want to embody to teach your children how to live? Like what is the lesson that you want to give them without saying anything, but just being this? So it's coming back again to like, what is this thing that you're embodying? What are you feeling inspired by? And again, it's all based on your own intuition. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry if you can hear that. That's my cat. It's how do you create this word that you can then translate to, this is how I want my children to see me, or this is how my children motivate me to be better every single day. These are the lessons that I'm learning. You know, it's my family always gets my aunties and uncles always get their grandkids names, and it's just because their names give them pure joy, and that's perfect. That is their word, because when they see that name, like that's all they want to see. That's that feeling of joy that it gives them. So I'm not saying that someone's name isn't right for a bracelet, but sometimes it's not the only reason. Yeah. So this example is from Chris, and he was talking to a coffee shop owner, and the owner was like, my word is success. And I think that is a big word, and that's an incredible thing to strive for. And success also looks very different for everybody. And so that's what Chris did. He asked him, you know, what does it take to be successful? And what does success feel like? And for this person, it was building a sense of community. And so community was his word. And so sometimes it's the motivation behind the word that is the word. In our family, you know, we have there's always someone who is on a new venture or doing something big and new and bold. And so just to remind them that they have our support and our love, I think that's sometimes something that gets to be reminded too, especially because we're all here together for each other. Um, and then the last example Chris has is his friend Layla. So she said her word is give work. And the thing is, like, that's like the name of her book. That's also the name of her nonprofit, and that's something that she lives every single day. And so sometimes it's an automatic response, like, oh, this is what I'm trying to achieve in the world. Yes, but they've already embodied it, right? And so how can we support them to 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 be what they want to be when they're already embodying this? So he always says, what would it take you to 10x your impact of giving work? And then she said, focus. Um, and so it's this idea that, like, maybe somebody else in our family or somebody else in our friend group, they live and breathe this intention, and maybe that's not their word, because maybe that's, they already know it, they already embody it. So what's the next one? And sometimes I get a lot of people who are like, I've been living this word every day for 4 years. I'm like, that's awesome. That's so great. So what's the next step? What is the next challenge? What would help support you in creating an even bigger impact in that? So how do we support you more, basically? And so this is the greatest tips. Trust your intuition. It's how you distinguish yourself as a maker, as a conversationalist. It's your, we can give you guidelines and we can give you sort of rules of thumb, but how you interpret them and how you embody them, and how you are being with this other person, like that exchange, you'll definitely feel whether or not that's their word, and it is like a synergistic feeling. And so trust your gut. And that means sometimes the first word is perfect. Sometimes it's just like, this person, you ask this word and this person knows, and that's the end of it, and that's great. And then you have a conversation from there that's just fun, and you're not trying to look for a word or anything like that. And the second biggest thing I would say is, like, have fun when you're having these conversations, because the energy that you bring into the conversation is gonna be, the other person's gonna feel it. And so for you to have fun is even more important than for like this focused, like, agenda of finding someone's word. Like, that, I think, is the most important piece. Someone asked, would you suggest having a thesaurus nearby when searching for words? Sometimes, but sometimes I feel like two people bouncing ideas off of each other ends up finding a word that's like perfect. Like, sometimes you end up finding the same word at the same time, and that's pretty cool. So we're on to stamping. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to stamping? Should it only be one word, or two or three, or more of a statement? So it can be, typically on our tokens, it's 14 characters, including spaces. So it can be a short phrase or a long word. That's what I usually say. And if not, then sometimes there's ways to shorten the phrase so that it fits in, like dropping a letter here or there, so that it fits. But I'll be showing 2 words, just so that we can get spacing and things like that. But it could be a short phrase, like, I am worthy, pay it forward, might be a little long, but I think it could fit, it, depending on how you want to stamp it. Um, do you include a list of words to help with identifying words? Sometimes. So I've done this a lot for events. And so we'll have the question cards out, and we'll also have a list of like popular words for people if they are waiting or looking. If you're doing it with your family and you're planning it beforehand, or with your friends or whoever, you can definitely include a list of like our popular words or the questions that you want to ask, just so that they can prepare for it. I feel like as much as we want this person to find their own word in their own way, uh, sometimes the most supportive thing is like showing them all of these words that that might sort of spark inspiration, um, and it might jog a little bit of a memory. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we move on to stamping? Okay. So before we get started with the actual stamping, I know I feel like I've said mindset so many times, but I don't know about you. I say that I am a perfectionist learning to find perfect in other ways. So um, because we're stamping a bracelet, and we had this a beautiful, beautiful conversation with someone, we really want to stamp the perfect bracelet for them. And the thing is that all of these bracelets are hand stamped, and we're not perfect. And so we have our own style whenever it comes to stamping, our own unique signature when it comes to stamping. And where I want to sort of refocus the perfectionism is like having that perfect conversation, because the bracelet will reflect that, however it is. And so if you see this token on the side, it says deathbed, which is a little bit morbid, I know, but there's a story behind it. And if you can see, there's the E on bed is backwards. And so it is not a perfect token, but it was a story that Chris shared. So he was at brunch and he saw Conan O'Brien just in that restaurant with him. So he went up to him and was like, I would love to, what's your word? I would love to make you a bracelet. And then Conan replied, deathbed, because I want to live a life that when I get to my deathbed, I feel enriched and fulfilled, and I didn't live with any regrets. And so it's sort of like how it's his North Star on how he wants to live his everyday life. And so Chris stamped this word, they're in a restaurant, so it's like a very public place. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure. So he stamped this word and he saw the E was backwards and he was like, oh no. So he went to Conan and was like, here's your bracelet, but I stamped the E backwards. I can redo it for you, or, if you want it. And Conan was like, oh no, this is actually even more perfect. This is even better than I expected. So these little quirks that we have when we're stamping, it could just end up being the thing that makes it really special and unique for that other person. And for me, in my own experience, at like 95% of the time, people don't even notice. People don't notice the things that we notice because we know exactly how we want this bracelet to look. But they don't notice, and it's just it's that feeling of that conversation that sticks, and this bracelet is just reflective of that. So, oh yeah, Miriam says, Shawnette, if you take the Find Your Word quiz on the website, it gives you a few words based on your answers. And that is a great suggestion. Thank you so much, Miriam. If you have family members, you can always direct them to the What's Your Word quiz that we have. And I'll also link that in the email for, like people, just to get them started, just to get them inspired. If this is part of the planning process. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so stamping. We have the setup, the spacing, the depth, and then I'm going to show how to do 2 words. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And then and then I'll show you everything that I do. So first, the setup. So I have the stamping post. It's a 4x4 by 3 feet piece of wood that we got at, I think, Lowe's or something, just like any hardware store that sells lumber. You can just ask them to cut a piece of wood for you. We have instructions on how to make your own stamping post because this one doesn't have any legs for stability, and I'm okay with that. But if you want a little bit more stability at the bottom, we have instructions on how to create that. What this will help, I don't know if you've like played with your maker kit or anything or tried to stamp on a table, it's quite loud. But this will help with the noise and also, more importantly, the depth. So you're not having to work as hard to create deeper impressions because of, I don't know, physics, like the equal and opposite reaction to things, and it's a smaller space versus like on a table where the energy will go out, you know. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I picture it in my head. And we have our hammer, our stamping base. Here is our letters and this is our letter stamp, and then this is our symbol stamp. And then I'll be stamping on a round nickel bracelet today. So yes, so I just wanted to show that. So then I can get to, I'll adjust this so you can see a little bit clearer. Yeah, is that okay for everybody? Okay, so first of all, before we get started, so whenever you put your bracelet onto your stamping base, you can see like there's a little bit of a deeper ledge and a higher ledge. So you're gonna put your bracelet like this, where the strings are hanging off the higher ledge, and that is exactly why we've designed it this way, because the string will take up that space, and then you can turn it. And so we have this, and what you're gonna do, open this up. So what you'll do is, this is a letter stamp. You'll always, always, always have your letter stamps facing the letter facing you. That is how it will be right side up and facing the right direction. And what you'll do is you will hold your letter stamp, and then the center, your stamp goes in the center where it says stamp, right up against it. And what I like to do is, if I'm stamping this normally, I like to use my thumb to push the stamp against that middle peg. And we designed the middle peg tall enough so that you have, so that it can just go flush against it. And then I'll use my other fingers to really press down and make sure that it's anchored on the center peg. So that way you won't get that double bounce sort of situation. There is a sticker that, so if you got your kit before 2018, November of 2018, then you won't have a sticker. But if you purchased it afterwards, then all of the stamping bases have stickers, and we do sell those stickers. And if you wanted to, email me afterwards and we'll work it out. I think this sticker is really great, and so I think everybody should have it. It's just for ease. Yeah, so I'll have my thumb against, like pushing against the stamp against the peg. And I'll have these fingers really anchoring the stamp down. And then we stamp. And so I do 4 little taps. And because of the way I'm holding it, the letter stamp won't move. Some people are really great and they can do it in one, and I'm just not that strong. So I have to do multiple. I don't know if you can see that, if that's a little dark, but there's the S right here. So what you're gonna do then is you're gonna rotate your token. So you're not moving, just the token's moving. And you're gonna have the center of the letter line up with the center of the red line. So we designed it so that this is approximate spacing, right? Like I said, everybody has their own unique way of stamping, their own style, and letters are different widths. So like a W is much wider than an I. So you'll have to play around sort of like with what you like in your own spacing. But these are just sort of like guidelines for you. So you rotate it to the center of the first letter, and then you'll always be stamping in the center so that it's, even. So I'm stamping the word still, and I'm gonna stamp the phrase be still tonight. I hope that's not too loud if that's, and sometimes, whenever I do it, I'll use this hand to guide the token so that whenever it's exactly where I want it to be, and then I push down and then I let go so that the token doesn't accidentally like move over. So here is my still. Can you see that? Can you sort of see that ish? So it's not perfect by any means. The spacing is like a little bit off, but it still looks good. So, and so whenever you're doing two words, so I'm stamping be still. Can you see this? I feel like it's much easier to do it whenever the sun is out and I have a little bit of natural lighting and it's not glaring everywhere. But here is be still. So I'm drawing this template out just for my own reference. So when you're doing two words, typically it's usually a word on top and a word on bottom. Some people do like it whenever they have like, one time I stamped 3 words for someone on a bracelet, and what they wanted was all 3 words to go in the same direction so that whenever they wore it, no matter where the token spun, they would see a different word. So that's sort of, I thought that was really neat. But okay, so you have be still. And essentially I chose this because be is 2 letters and then still is 5 letters. So you're not getting exact spacing, right? So what you're gonna do is, so that's the center-ish of the token. And so as you can see, the I will go through the center of the token, and then the B will be in these in-between spaces, whenever you line it up. So you'll see how it sort of matches up with each other. And this is not by any means a perfect representation of a token, but it is just for my own reference whenever I'm doing spacing. Does anybody have any questions on this? Not yet. I will show you. And so then whenever you do stamping for the top word, you'll just turn your stamping base So then you're on that lower part of the ledge and you're stamping, the peg is closer to you and the token will be further from you. So I have here. And the way that the strings line up, it uncovers the center letter perfectly. So again, you always want your letter stamp to be facing you, even if you're stamping upside down, like with the stamping base upside down. And again, so then I'll inverse it. So I'm using my fingers to push up against the center peg, and I'm using my thumb as that anchor point so that the token doesn't bounce. And so I is the center. And so I know that I have to shift the I just a little bit to get to, so then I see the space between the I and the L, and that's where I'm gonna put my B. And then from there, I'll show you. You just need that first letter to know where it lines up. So, and then we have these dotted blue lines. It serves as the exact same thing as that red line. So you just move your token so that the letter is going through that dotted line, and then you can stamp your next letter. So there you go. Be still. Yeah. Any questions so far? No questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
When I go to do this on my own, sometimes I can put the stamp all the way. I put it up and I hold it, and it's higher, and then there's sometimes where it's lower. How is that outcome? What am I doing wrong?
Oh, interesting. Sometimes it's higher, like whenever you have it up against.
Well, let me see if I can show you one of the things. So, so some of them are like, if you can see, I don't know if you can see nah, you're not going to be able to see this. No. All the way. No, you're not going to be able to.
Okay.
So,
okay.
like the E is up here and the O is down here on love, you know?
I see. So like, that just means like whenever you have your letter stamp, it's slightly it's not flush against it at a 90-degree angle. It's just slightly up. And so the way that I do that is like if you feel the groove, so if you feel the groove of how you normally hold it, and if you normally hold it a little bit up, that's okay, right? But if you feel it and you end up being like, oh, okay, this is more comfortable, this is the most comfortable for me to hold my letter stamp, because that's important, because you don't want to smush your finger at any point. But if that's that's the comfortable place, then just recreate that feeling whenever you're stamping. I'm really big on sort of how if your body is positioned in a certain way to feel what this exactly feels like, so that you can recreate that feeling each time, instead of using necessarily like your eyes to judge, because then sort of we're using different markers as like a reference point versus like using our body. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. It is past 6 o'clock. Thank you so much for being here. If you have any time to stay on, I just have a couple more things that I want to show you that I think would be really helpful. But if you have to go, I totally understand. And we'll be sending all the links in this video out as well. So I'm gonna share my screen one last time, and we're gonna zip on through this. But Lorraine, do you feel like I answered your question? Okay, awesome. Does anybody have any other questions? No? So Thanksgiving plans.
Yes, I've been questions in the chat box. Well, for starters, now I got to go back to the chat box, but darn it. Is there a way to like erase the mistake if you made a mistake? Any way to like fix a mistake you made?
Yes. So I guess it depends on the mistake. If you find that it's just like an upside down letter or a sideways letter or something like that, I really highly suggest to keep going and to see the whole bracelet as a whole, and then to see before, because again, it comes back to that perfectionism feeling, and I totally get it. And so just to take a step back after you finish the bracelet. But if you have a mistake that you want to sort of quote unquote erase, don't erase in the same way. So we just had a maker share with us. So she uses the back of the hammer, of the new hammer, which is sort of like this rounded bit. She actually used that to pound out the letter. So what you'll end up doing is making a thinner token, a thinner, slightly wider token. So she just pounds it out and covers up the mistake, and then goes back in and redoes it. But it will not look like it will not look like how our tokens look. It'll look textured because the back of the hammer is textured. So it'll be a textured token with even deeper letters. So
otherwise, there's no other way. Otherwise, there's no other way.
Not really.
Practice tokens. You don't have like practicing tokens.
We do. So in the maker kit, it comes with 5 practice tokens. And so what I like to do is I'll practice all around the token. So like cover that whole token up as much as I can. And and that usually by that point, again, it's about your own style and your own feelings whenever you go to stamp. And so then it'll be, you'll get your own sense of the groove of stamping. And there's 5 of them. So you can always do that over and over again. And yeah, but we do sell tokens by themselves as well. In a 50 pack, so you can always have like extra tokens that you want to practice on. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Hope that helps, Mary.
Thank you.
One more thing.
Yes.
Tying of the bracelets or the necklaces. Are there videos or something that you have to show us?
We do. So we have a whole page on if you want to tie your own bracelets. We have, I think, three or 4 different styles that we share with you. So it goes from the classic to the round bracelet, a different sort of macrame knot as well. And there is, if you're on our Facebook group, if you search bracelet making or like a snake cord or something like that in the maker group, there's one maker who has shared a video on the Facebook group of her doing it. So that's always like, there's so much that the makers share in the community that's amazing, from their own DIY sort of knots and stuff like that. Yeah. So we'll link that as well. These are great questions. Any other questions? I love everybody sharing these sort of quote unquote mistake bracelets, but ended up not being mistakes. Yes. Okay. So moving on very quickly. I don't want to keep too much of your time, but I will show you the Facebook group, the Maker Resource Center, which is sort of like your one-stop shop for all training materials, which has onboarding and the word finder quiz, things for yourself, some reflection guides for yourself, and some training guides. So this is a nice little quote that we like to end on, saying, we believe there's a purpose inside each of us, and we want to encourage people to share more truth and inspiration. So this is just our way of extending that. So, oh, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Great. So the Facebook group, it's called MyIntent Makers on Facebook. This is the admin side, so the side you won't see, but everything in the center you will. So this is everything this is just our community of makers, you know, seeing that everybody is making their own bracelets, having their own stands. Some people post things like questions for the group. You know, we really want you to utilize this search function, because there is a lot of history on this Facebook group, and some people have really shared some really great tidbits throughout the years. And so this will probably be your fastest way of getting an answer, is through searching the Facebook group. And if your answer doesn't get answered there, then feel free to write a post, and then we'll see your question and we'll post it, and we'll probably answer it there. So then it, like, we're continuing to answer all new questions. And let's see. And then the Maker Resource Center. This is the place. This is the newest thing we have. We heard a lot of feedback from makers saying we need one place with all of the information so that we can easily get it. And so we have onboarding, which will take you to, you know, all of these different, you know, checklists and your own intentions. Who are you going to create it for? Things like that. The word finding guide, which will bring you to like the word finding quiz for people. Dr. Beverly is asking, is there a way we can have people do the word finder quiz and get the results? Yes. So once you do the quiz, it'll show your results after like 10 questions or so. So they'll start the quiz. You just have to share the link with them. And what's their word? So this is the how-to training guides, all of the stamping tips that you want, the bracelet tying, how to use their question cards, everything like that will be on here. This is just a carousel, but if you go down here and you click for more training, this is the gold pot of gold. Yeah, that's the one. So you click how to stamp, and we walk you step by step through all of it. And so we'll have this linked as well. If you have a maker kit and you're looking for different ways to use it, we also have this page of sort of use cases for you. So like if you're a teacher and you got it for your family to do at Thanksgiving, but you're also wanting to do it with your class, we have a page where we show how teachers have used it. And if you're a teacher, you can get a 50% discount, because we know that like a lot of times teachers are paying out of their own pocket, and we want to make it as accessible as possible. We also have a blog. We had this amazing education night where a teacher hosted the workshop for our educators and showed them sort of how to access grants and some other tools to like get money to fund this activity for their classroom. So I will link that. I don't know. I know that Jenny, I think you asked the question about having your students. So maybe that'll be a good resource for you. And I'll include it into the email too, just in case you're a teacher, or if you have any teacher friends that may want to do this with their class. You know, it's always really tough, especially like in this virtual setting to keep the attention and everything like that. So I feel you. And I want to make it I want to support you as much as I can. So with that, I have shared all of the information that I can share right now. Does anybody have any questions, any last questions before we're done? Okay, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for being here tonight. I am so grateful for everybody who joined. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions, especially if you're going through it and like it'll be, you know, sometimes we don't have questions now, but we have questions when we're actually hands in everything. And so don't worry about any questions that you have, bring them to me. Search on the Facebook group if you're not already on there, join. I'll see you on there. And yes, we look for a follow-up email with the recording of this video and all of the links that I mentioned by the end of the week. We want to get this to you before, you know, the hectic Thanksgiving season, or maybe not as hectic this year, but we really hope that everybody has like a safe and wonderful and special Thanksgiving. And if you want to brainstorm, I love brainstorming. So if you want to think of how you would want to host this virtually with your family, or, you know, sending a virtual, not virtual, sending a gift bag or something to all your family members or anything like that, that's something that I would love to talk to you about. So I'm going to leave my email in the chat box, but it's also whenever you signed up for the night, that my email is on there too. So yeah, and if you don't have a sticker for your stamping base, please contact me. We'll work it out. It's a lifesaver when it comes to stamping. So, okay. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.